Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Better Humans at Work. I am thrilled to be joined by Martin Griffen, a principal geotechnical engineer and multi-award winning equity, diversity, and inclusion champion. Martin is a white heterosexual man, male neurodivergent. Specifically, he's autistic, dyslexic, and dyspraxic, as well as being visually impaired 24/7. At work, Martin is an EDI advocate and a workplace employee resource group lead. He enjoys supporting Liverpool, watching science fiction, and spending time with his family. Thank you so much for being here today, Martin.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be here.
Now you're joining us from across the pond, am I right?
Yeah, in a place called Kent, which is about 60 miles southeast of London.
Okay, and have you lived in the London area most of your life?
No, I've been in Scotland, which is northern Great Britain, Cornwall, which is as far southwest, and I was born in Northern Ireland.
Okay.
I've travelled all around the country working on projects and
Very nice.
Universities and such like.
Very nice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with our audience here today. And I'm so curious to hear about your EDI journey. Now, I've never heard that terminology before. I say DEI. Is there a reason for starting with the E and centering the equity part?
I think it's an Englishism.
Okay.
I think Americans say DNI or DNI, or Australians, I think, say IND. Okay. UK, we say EDI. I think as long as you've got the intention right and you're sort of covering all aspects of. If you can, some people say you could call EDI A as well for accessibility.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like as many letters you get more and more letters added to it, and then people say justice as well. I mean, as long as you're treating people fairly and with respect and dignity, I think that's the main thing.
I agree.
Because we can get covered up with labels, and even what we do is job titles or roles and responsibilities. It's how we treat people in the end of the day, because we want the best for all people, not just ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. I can't agree more. So how did you get started working in the EDI space?
Well, I work full-time as an engineer 70-80% of my time. Mm-hmm. And then I guess with my lived experience being autistic, dyslexic, dyspraxic, and visually impaired, I think it's like storytelling and then sort of telling people my story about my conditions and sharing and being self-advocating, raising awareness. And then people said, "Oh, you're pretty good at this." And then there's something like, sense of justice. I think with autism, it comes naturally. And then you sort of do more research, learning about your condition, my own conditions, and then other people's conditions, and then people's identities, and then you sort of advocate for them being a bit better ally and challenging sort of workplace practices that you don't think are right, almost. So that you become a voice for people who don't feel they've got a voice.
Yeah.
So that's, and then you get ultimately asked to lead ERGs and such like. And
so tell me about the ERG that you lead.
That's a neurodiversity group. We've got about 15 in our company, which is about 15% of the workplace number of employees. So a bit low, but I would have, because there's a lot of masking. A lot of people say they are, but they don't want to be officially diagnosed within the company or shown to be in the company. So, and I think that's quite similar in quite a lot of workplaces. But yeah, we support one another, have presentations from external speakers, and then sort of try teaching, or mentoring younger ones and trying to encourage the younger ones on and help them, being role models to them. Some of the older ones help them just make, because one thing that struck me when one person just joined the company, I felt isolated. And I think when you're in that underrepresented group or minority group, you feel alone. And it's like breaking those myths that you're not alone.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you're part of a tribe and part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't have that when I graduated, when I first graduated, when I first went to the workplace. I think that it's so important now, because there's so many. there's so much acceptance of difference, but then sometimes there's the complete opposite when we have to be like everybody else, like using social media or behaving in the same way, and we don't want to be. We should still preserve our unique identity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's what makes us special and makes us uniquely who we are.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned the term masking. Would you mind describing what that is to the audience?
Masking is when you've got I guess it's when you've got a condition like my autism. I could hide it and I could appear neurotypical, which is like non-autistic, non-dyslexic, non-neurodivergent. So it's just very, as like when you're sort of hiding your conditions and sort of protecting yourself from sort of any shame or any discrimination or bias that other people may, or stigma that people may put your way. But then I think that's ultimately more stressful for you as an individual because you're having to have another layer of complexity to your identity. But so some people call it camouflaging. So it's depending who you talk to.
Yeah. Yeah, I've shared before, think about that energy that you're spending hiding that aspect of yourself and that energy you could otherwise be using on your work or in your interaction.
But it's conversely, if you don't mask, then you're seen. You could be then the subject matter expert or cultural taxation or minority taxation that you're seen as being in the role of two people because people come to you as the disability expert or the neurodivergent expert in the company. So you're having to do that kind of role if you don't mask. So, and how much do you give of yourself, which is very draining sometimes.
Yeah.
So both that's stressful in itself, and you can how much do you, and how much does your boss really need to know about of your identity to make accommodations or adjustments?
So that's the sweet spot then is how much is needed to know to make the necessary accommodations and not needing to express more than that.
And how much you feel you can not get away with, because that sounds like you've done something wrong, but how much accommodations you really need to thrive or be successful, or that would get you over that almost barrier.
Yeah.
And that's different for everyone. I mean, I have text software that reads words back to me, or I can narrate it to the software. But then that may work for some people, but it may not work for other people. So it's on an individual basis, one-to-one, because you have to have bespoke solutions.
How does someone go about identifying what accommodations they need? Like how does someone go about, as you said, that's like that fine line?
Yeah. You could Google it. You've got to Google or get a psychiatrist report, occupational health. I think in America you have something called Jan, what is it? The Jan, Ask Jan. There's a when you can go through and search your condition and it tells you what adjustments are needed.
Oh, okay.
Is it Ask Jan? I'll just check. Yeah, Job Accommodation Network in America.
Job Accommodation Network.
And I think and that's for a lot of disabilities and neurodiverse conditions. But there's a lot of good help on LinkedIn. A lot of people advocating how to help people, and you can talk to people and you can say what works for them, and you can sort of find out what might work for you. But then it's best to probably get professional advice as well, rather than doing it independently.
And it seems like this community piece is really big. It's really important.
Yeah, I think community. Yeah, I think any identity, even like gender, race, and neurodiversity. I think in disability, I think because we are underrepresented, as opposed to the sort of alpha male, the typical or those ones who have the loudest voices in the room.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't always probably, or maybe always to protect ourselves, because sometimes you just want to retreat back to your own place, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. I was curious with neurodiversity, do you consider mental health conditions falling under that umbrella, or is that something separate?
I think it's separate, but there is
Yeah,
overlap, because I think there are mental health issues, I think, sometimes with autism, perhaps. And ADHD has depression associated. So I don't think you can separate them, but I think you have to treat them separate.
yeah.
But that's my only opinion, I know.
Do you see with other ERGs if they have inclusion of like mental health disorders as well, or is it usually like a mental health ERG?
There's usually in other companies, we don't have one where I work at the moment, but we have mental health training,
I see.
and mental health first aiders, but we don't have any mental health ERG specifically, but other companies do. So I guess it's where companies are on their ERG maturity and where they are on their journey,
Yeah, that
and
makes
if
sense.
on how much they want to emphasize on that. But then I guess it's, is it a team's responsibility to be looking out for each other as well as like mental first aiders? We're all meant to be watching out for each other, especially like if we're all working remotely. It, I I think perhaps it's everyone's responsibility,
Yeah,
because it can't just be the it can't be just ERG's responsibility or office leads or team leads responsibility.
yeah,
We're it, it, really, if we're doing D&I properly, we should be putting ourselves out of a job, because we're just a support service to make companies work well and the dynamics of companies work better. But unfortunately, I think like emotional intelligence is lacking. People don't know how to respond to each other, or don't how. We've almost lost something since COVID. We've gained that interaction by, like, we can talk over the pond, but we don't know our neighbour next door, perhaps.
yeah,
We don't talk to our neighbour. If we've got an elderly relative or an elderly neighbour, we don't talk to them as much as we talk to our best friend in Australia, for example, which seems very strange.
yeah. So with neuro-inclusion and how to be a more neuro-inclusive organization, would you feel like emotional intelligence is a big part of that?
Yeah, an acceptance of difference. And if someone says, could they have like for if you've got a job interview, could they have the questions in advance? They may challenge the status quo or the way of doing something, because it works well for them, and they're not trying to be dismissive or argumentative. It's just because they think in different ways, or that, yeah. And then people, because I think there's been a lot of legacy of people thinking we're being disruptive, maybe because we don't fit that normal way of thinking.
Disruptive. And I think about, at least in corporate America, disruptive is a good thing. We want to disrupt and be innovative. And
Yeah,
it's sounding like this is not necessarily perceived to be a good thing.
it can be, but I think if you're seen as a troublemaker, you don't want to be a troublemaker,
Yeah.
because we're still under the envelope of the law, and when does a riot become or when does a protest become a riot, or when does anger become a murder? That,
Mm-hmm.
because it's still the same motion of haters. If you're going to you're angry with somebody, it's still that anger. I don't know.
What can organizations do to do a better job of not being, disruptive or just being an accepted accommodation?
talk to us. I think I know it sounds silly. If you've got one neurodivergent person in your company, talk to them, because they're going to have. They may think of something the way you do something and solve your problems in a way that you haven't thought of. Because we think by being neurodivergent, we think different, we process information differently, so we may be able to come up with solutions that you've never thought of. So it's that brings out the whole meaning of diversity, and when you've got multiple thought processes and multiple people in a room, you move away from group think bias, so you're going to have more and more better solutions. So I think it's just involving us. If you know what I mean.
Sorry, can you say that again?
If you have multiple voices in the room, like neurodiverse people, you've got getting the true value of diversity and diverse thought, rather than just a group think bias and just the same sort of structures and the same ways of thinking. And I think because we're in such a world at the moment with so many things, crazy things going on, and disorder and sort of uncertainty, we need more diverse forces to come sort of climate change out, sort of structures and way that we do work. And we haven't worked out how we do work after COVID properly, I don't think. Because even if we go in the workplace 2 days a week, we may not see the people the next week, because we did the way we do. So the way we do inclusion at work has to change, and that we can't just cut and paste from one company to another company. We have to think solutions that we have to put straight to our company, rather than cut and paste jobs. Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of that, people trying to copy paste the solution, and that's why it doesn't work. D&I doesn't work as well, because people take one thing from one place and think that's going to work. And we have to look at bespoke solutions for those workplaces.
I laugh because I can't agree more. And, we have clients that always want us to give us benchmarking data. They want to know how they're doing compared to other companies like them. Yeah. And I go, well, when it comes to DEI, what matters, the point of comparison needs to be you. It needs to be how you're doing compared to now, compared 6 months from now or 10 years from now. Yeah. It can't be other organizations, because every organization, it's its own organism.
And we in the UK, we have this thing called talent acquisition, and looking for people to join the company, and they call it talent, and it's like a war on talent, and sometimes the unique identifiers, the D&I policies, but it should never be like that, because we're trying to say we've got a better policy, but we're not. We should be competing. There should be just standard ways of doing best practice. Yeah. And we learn from each other. Say, I do this, like we've got things called accessibility passports, so I can give that to my line manager and say, this is what I am struggling with, and this is some access. These are my accommodations I need, and that would go around with me from project manager to project manager. So we can share those sort of best practices with, and some companies can pick that up and adapt it to the way they work. So I'm not saying copy my template, but just use that as an idea, and then you run with that with your work.
Yeah.
Because I don't know.
So what are some of those best practices then? I know you've already shared a few for having neuro-inclusive workplaces.
What's the best? I think if you haven't got an ERG, get one set up. Even in meetings, have an agenda before a meeting, give that published. This is all scattered for accessible meetings, like teams with the hands up raising and things like that. Have a catch-up meeting with your line manager or team manager weekly or regularly, so you can talk about what's working well, what's not working well. Transparent promotions and things like that. Just I think it may sound obvious, but I think it's just treating us with respect, and because I think we're a bit more sensitive than other people. I don't know why, but sorry.
I love that. And all those examples, obviously will help those with neurodivergence in the workplace, but they're just good examples to help everyone in the workplace, which is what I love about EDI and DEI is, done right, everyone benefits from these best practices.
Yeah, it's like if you've got a ramp on a snow day, it's going to have someone who's disabled in a wheelchair, but it may have someone who's got a cycle to get in. So what's good for a disabled person, or generally will help everyone, or if you've got clearer instructions around the office to where the fire exits are, that's going to help everyone in an emergency. Yeah, it's just simple. And I think because we think differently, then it helps that way of thinking to make it more inclusive. And so often we don't get asked to those meetings, and I think you're missing out on so much talent or so much thought process or so many people's come up by not ideas because we want to for the sake of ideas, but just come up with better solutions. And then they feel empowered to be able to share those ideas, and so you get to creating a psychologically safe environment.
Psychologically safe environments. And what do you mean by that?
Where people are free to share, free to talk, and be themselves. Because we talk a lot about bringing our authentic self to work, but then it comes back to what we said about masking. If people feel they're masking all the time, that they're not being able to be authentic, then they can't. Then it's not. I don't think it is psychologically safe. There is something wrong with that. I mean, I'm not saying. I know people sometimes don't share for some reasons but I think ultimately we want people to be almost free to be able to take those burdens off themselves and be able to. But unless I'm being sort of puritanical and saying this is how you should behave, I try not to. But I'd like people just to be who they are and authentic. Because some of us can't mask or camouflage our conditions, and I find it very hard.
So it sounds like a neuro-inclusive workplace is one where people don't have to mask, where they're psychologically safe, where accommodations are provided, where people aren't overburdened by being the expert in the room, right? Where people are included in important decision-making processes, and where people are treated with value and dignity and respect. And that just sounds like the type of workplace I'd want to work in.
I mean, that's my perception. I mean, there's probably so much more, I mean, it's like accepting the difference of if you have a meltdown. How people have got to accept that that's just the way I tick and the way if I've had a bad day and I just need a quiet space in the office to go and unwind to. But how tolerant, I guess it's like anything. How tolerant we are of difference, and because how much we want people to conform to the company, but then we've all joined the same company because of the values. We like the values of the company. So they're the things that should unite us as the company. And then the EDI, I think, can be framed around that, because hopefully you've all got the same sort of values within a company. Like treating people with respect, but then how we fit that EDI policy in that and the policy frame. That's probably beyond my pay grade, but I think. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say it just seems like you're doing really great work with your ERG and with your neuro-inclusion advocacy, Martin. I just really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to our audience about it.
I hope I've been helpful. It's just my take on it.
No, your take is very much appreciated and valued. And any closing remarks before we wrap up?
I probably just alluded to it. There's this quite famous quote: "If you've met one neurodivergent person, you've only met one." So this is just my take, and then it's like, and there's that famous nothing about us without us, and I think that's like any group, and it's like just I think this world's going crazy by the moment, and things happening in your side of the pond, and I think going too political, I think things we're getting pushed and pushed with, what, we get told we're doing we're being goody, not good, too much social, we're doing too much social work, or caring too much, or trying to be politically correct, and what gets pushed and pushed away to the side, and it's not all what we get told is not important. And surely there's, and to me there's just greater need for us just to stick together and be strong together, and support, being allies to one another.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I can support you in what you're doing, and you and colleagues can support what I do, and then because we're all on different stages of the journey and having different aspects of EDI and DNI together.
Yeah, I love that. What a great way to wrap things up. Thank you so much, Martin. I really appreciate you taking the time, and thanks for all that you do to help us